He was once just a football player in Uruguay. Now he's one of the most wanted drug lords. And despite being hunted by Interpol, no one can catch him. And one early morning in Bolivia, authorities thought they had finally had him. July the 29th, 2023, Santa Cruz, Bolivia. At exactly 4:17 a.m, the gates came down. Not with an explosion, but with precision. Over 2,000 officers, armed, masked, silent, surrounded a luxury mansion hidden behind palms and guarded walls. The target was inside. This was not just another raid. This was the moment they had been waiting for. A chance to bring down the man who had outsmarted entire governments. But then, something went wrong. Gunfire, screams, a sudden gap in radio signals. What happened next would leave one officer missing, an entire task force humiliated, and a fugitive more legendary than ever. I will get to that, but to understand how it all unravelled in a matter of seconds, we have to go back, because this escape was no accident. It was the result of something far more dangerous, and far more planned. This is the story of Sebastián Marset. He always wanted to be a footballer, not for the trophies, not for the fans, but for the disguise. Sebastián Marset grew up in Montevideo with one dream, making it on the pitch. As a teenager, he pumped gas for spare change. He spent it on a David Beckham jacket, his first taste of the dream. He didn't see street lamps, he saw stadium lights, but his skill never seemed enough to back his dreams. By his late teens, Marset was just another name on the team sheet in Uruguay's dusty amateur leagues. A midfielder with average feet, forgettable passes and zero prospects. But he clung to the dream, not because he believed in it, but because it would later serve a far more dangerous purpose. Fast forward to 2021, Marset is 31, way past his prime, if there ever was one, and suddenly he shows up in Paraguay at a modest club called Deportivo Capiata. No agent, no backstory, just a silver Lamborghini and a $10,000 offer for the number 10 jersey. He wasn't scouted, he paid to play. And when his performance tanked, when he missed a penalty so badly it sailed into orbit and helped sink the team into relegation, his teammates begged the coach to bench him. But the coach wouldn't. He couldn't. Marset was covering the payroll. According to La Daria, he gifted the coach 2 yachts, a country estate, a house. The man who couldn't complete a 5-yard pass had just bought himself a starting position. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished, slipped away from Paraguay like a vapour. No farewell, no explanation. But the police were starting to take notice. By 2023 he reappeared, this time in Bolivia, playing under the name Luis Paulo Amorim Santos, using fake Brazilian documents. New name, same game. He joined a second division club called Los Leones El Torno, not just as a player, but as its secret owner. He wore the number 23 in honour of Beckham. He lived in a mansion with a pool, ocelots and monkeys. He threw parties, played matches, posed for photos. Locals saw a rich foreign footballer. What they didn't see was a fugitive kingpin moving millions of illegal substances behind the curtain. Football gave him everything his skills never could: movement across borders, a public persona, a reason to be anywhere at any time. While authorities chased a ghost, Marset shook hands with politicians, built supply lines from the Andes to Europe, and created the perfect camouflage. The footballer was never meant to win matches. He was built to move product. And what no one realised was that behind the jersey and the handshake, he was quietly constructing something far more dangerous than a sports career. He never wanted fame. What he needed was something far more useful: invisibility. While the world saw a footballer changing jerseys across South America, Sebastián Marset was quietly drafting the blueprint for a criminal empire. His first arrest came at just 18, caught with stolen goods in Uruguay. A year later, narcotics possession. 2 arrests, barely out of his teens. But these weren't the mistakes of a reckless kid. They were the first signs of a man testing the edges of the system. Then came his first real move. By 2012, Marset had crossed a line. He partnered with Juan Domingo Viveros Cartes, the uncle of Paraguay's sitting president, to smuggle 450 kilos of marijuana into Uruguay using a private aircraft. The deal collapsed. Marset was arrested, found with cannabis, illegal substances, and enough evidence to link him directly to the shipment. He was sentenced to prison in 2013 as part of Operation Halcyon, which resulted in the seizure of more than 173 kilos of marijuana, 35 grams of coke, weapons, vehicles, and cash. He was 22, and he was going to Libertad prison, one of Uruguay's largest and most dangerous facilities. But this wasn't the end. This was his education. Inside Libertad, Marset wasn't just surviving, he was networking, forging alliances with traffickers, building ties with cartel operators, learning the trade from inside its beating heart. 5 years later, he walked out of prison not as a lost youth, but as a man with a plan. Within months, he disappeared into Paraguay and Bolivia. To investigative bodies, it was sudden. To Marset, it was strategy. His name lit up on DEA radars, flagged in coke transit zones. His travel patterns didn't look random. They traced a map of key trafficking routes. He had just moved beyond petty shipments. Marset now aimed to dominate every stage of the trade, from coca fields to European ports, from cocoa leaves in the jungle to cash laundering in capital cities, production, export, and profit. And he was just getting started. By 2019, the Football Act was no longer necessary. Marset had already found where his empire would take root: Paraguay. There, he plugged directly into existing smuggling infrastructure and formed a powerful alliance with the Insfran clan, led by notorious Paraguayan narco lord Miguel Angel Tito Rico Insfran. Prosecutor Denny Yunk Pank filed charges against Miguel Angel Insfran, also known as Tio Rico. As part of the case, he revealed messages exchanged between Insfran and Sebastián Marset, exposing direct contact between the two. Narcotics were only part of the picture. The real game was laundering the profits through a network built to evade suspicion. Together, they built a network of front companies designed to launder massive narco profits. One of them involved sponsoring his own companies through football clubs, including River Plate of Paraguay. One of the most brazen was Mastion Productions, an events company founded by pastor Jose Insfran. It staged concerts for big-name Latin artists like Romeo Santos and Chichi Peralta. Behind the lights and the music, the real business was moving dirty money under the radar. Another front was Total Cars, a luxury dealership operating in Asunción and Ciudad del Este. It sold cars, motorcycles and boats, but its real purpose was to absorb and hide narco cash. And that was just the beginning. Using trusted frontmen, the organisation infiltrated multiple corporations: Industrial Acetera SAC in Capiata and San Jose Import-Export in Ciudad del Este. Each businesses served a single goal: to move millions of dollars without raising suspicion. Marset himself lived above it all, quite literally, in a 15th floor apartment inside the upscale Palacio de los Patos in Asunción, while his organisation quietly acquired dozens of properties and plots of land, some of which would eventually be seized by authorities. On paper, it was a success: concerts, football, land deals. Underneath, it was a laundering machine. Entertainment, agriculture, vehicles, real estate, everything was part of a financial maze designed to blur the lines between legal and illegal. And behind the front companies and fake names was family. Marset didn't rely on outsiders. Intelligence officials in Uruguay, Argentina and Paraguay later identified a tight inner circle of at least 8 relatives and close friends, including his wife, Giannina Garcia Truche, who helped run the businesses and manage illicit finances. His brother, Diego Marset, moved to Bolivia to strengthen ties with narcotics producers there. Another trusted figure, Federico Santoro, was wanted by Interpol for handling illegal money flows through the tri-border region, the very route that funneled funds from South America to foreign havens. And while the world focused on Mexico and Colombia, Marset was doing something different. He built his own cartel. Inside prison, he had made contact with Brazil's Primeiro Comando da Capital, First Capital Command PCC. That relationship later turned into a formal alliance, one that granted him access to narc labs in Bolivia and Colombia and disciplined PCC enforcers to protect shipments. From there, he modelled his own organisation, the Premier Cartel Uruguayo, PCU, the first Uruguayan cartel, designed to coordinate his expanding international network. And when the photo surfaced of his crew wearing medallions marked PCU, it wasn't just branding, it was a warning. He had gone from forgotten midfielder to the mind behind a criminal empire, not loud, not flashy, just calculated. And the system had barely even noticed. Marset didn't just build a network, he embedded it. He thought long term. A part of that strategy meant going beyond traffickers and front companies. He moved towards institutions. In Paraguay and Bolivia, Marset built relationships, sometimes friendly, sometimes corrupt, with police officers and politicians. One investigation in Paraguay uncovered that his network had even used evangelical churches to launder coke profits. He had direct ties to political figures. In Bolivia, he went one step further. Despite using false documents, he was issued a Bolivian passport. The official who approved it was a local immigration officer, the daughter of a former government minister. The paperwork, according to records, had followed all the proper procedures. His reach didn't stop at borders. In late 2021, while jailed abroad, Marset managed to secure a legitimate Uruguayan passport. Internal warnings labelled him a very dangerous and annoying drug trafficker. But somehow his prior convictions had been expunged and the passport was approved anyway. The fallout in Uruguay was immediate. The scandal triggered a political crisis and forced the resignation of both the foreign minister and the interior minister. For Marset, the simple document was a weapon, a tool that gave him a global movement, credibility and cover. He now had shell companies, safe houses, frontmen, alliances and clean papers. Everything he needed to disappear whenever necessary. And soon he would. Because just months later, the man with a passport no one should have signed would disappear into the wind, while armed officers tried to catch him. How do you catch a man who vanishes before the net is even cast? By the time authorities close in, he's already gone. October 2021, Dubai. Just months earlier, Sebastián Marset had been arrested in Dubai, caught travelling with a fake Paraguayan passport. He was detained, far from home, surrounded by international pressure. But Marset wasn't relying on brute force to get out. He used something far more effective: bureaucracy. While in custody, he urgently requested help from the Uruguayan consulate, and, despite warnings from Paraguay's ambassador, who cautioned against it, the Uruguayan government issued him a legitimate passport in November 2021. With that single document, everything changed. Dubai authorities released him, and just like that, he disappeared. By March 2022, Interpol had issued a red notice for his arrest, but it was already too late. Rumours started circling. Some said he was in Mozambique. Others believe he had resurfaced in Venezuela, hidden behind another fake name. For nearly 2 years, his location remained a mystery. Then he reappeared. Remember that moment when nearly 2,500 officers surrounded the luxury mansion in Santa Cruz? This was the closest anyone ever got to Sebastián Marset. Now, here's what really happened. July 2023, Santa Cruz, Bolivia. Acting on new intelligence, Bolivian authorities launched Operation Marset. They weren't taking any chances. Nearly 2,500 officers were deployed to storm a mansion where Marset was believed to be hiding under a false identity. But what they found inside was staggering. 17 rifles, thousands of bullets, bulletproof vests, luxury vehicles, caged exotic animals. It was more of a fortress than a home. But here's one thing they didn't find: Marset. As police closed in, an armed team of mercenaries opened fire. Amid the chaos, Marset escaped with his wife Giannina and their 3 children, fleeing in a convoy. A police officer was even kidnapped for hours to block the raid and slow pursuit. By sunrise, Marset had vanished again, this time into the vast Bolivian interior. Roadblocks were set, cities were locked down, more than 2,250 officers fanned out across the country. But he was nowhere. Investigators believed he may have slipped towards Cochabamba or crossed into Brazil, taking advantage of the confusion. Then came the twist. Marset released a video. Calm, smirking. He thanked Ismail Vilca, the head of the Special Forces to fight drug trafficking, for warning him ahead of the raid. So, the question was no longer, how did he get away? It was, who helped him do it? But how does someone disappear again and again without leaving a trace? Marset's greatest weapon isn't violence, it's deception. Behind each escape is a toolkit designed for one thing: invisibility. He holds a portfolio of forged identities from across Latin America. The fake Paraguayan passport in Dubai? Just the beginning. In Bolivia, he operated under the name Luis Amorim, posing as a Brazilian. Bolivian records show he even secured a local ID document under a false alias. So what's his real nationality? Uruguayan. What's he claimed to be? Paraguayan, Brazilian, Bolivian, possibly even Venezuelan. He's not just hiding, he's becoming someone else. In 2021, DEA and Paraguayan agents nearly had him. A heavily tattooed man was seen boarding a private jet in Asuncion. He was carrying a Bolivian passport. A biometric scan confirmed it: Sebastián Marset. So why didn't they arrest him? Because they thought they could tail him. They wanted the network, not just the man. But Marset's timing, as always, was perfect. He disappeared without a ripple again. Another missed opportunity, another cold trail. And over time, the sightings piled up. Not just in Dubai or Bolivia. There were unconfirmed reports of Angola, South Africa, even Venezuela and Brazil. At one point, a South African country code appeared on a phone he used. So the question remains, how is he always just far enough ahead? Each time the walls close in, someone seems to warn him, helps him vanish. As one Paraguayan official admitted, they only noticed him after a routine airport check flagged a fake passport. Until then, they had no idea who this guy really was, even though he'd been living in full view as a footballer. It's a pattern that repeats like a script: an arrest warrant, a dramatic raid, and then silence. Even the massive July 2023 escape in Bolivia wasn't the last time he slipped away. Nearly a year later, in July 2024, Marset's wife, Giannina Garcia, appeared alone at a Madrid airport, having arrived from Dubai. It wasn't a coincidence. Authorities believe she intentionally surrendered in Spain to avoid harsher prison systems elsewhere. Her arrest confirmed what many feared. After Bolivia, Marset had likely fled back to the UAE, using the safe haven to regroup. Spanish courts have since approved Giannina's extradition to Paraguay on money laundering charges. Meanwhile, Interpol has been alerted that Marset is possibly in Dubai as of mid-2024. But Marset? Still gone. No photos, no flights, just whispers. A stray passport here, a leaked video message there, and behind it all, a question no one can answer. Where is Sebastián Marset now? He evaporated, but his product didn't. While Marset slipped through the borders and changed identities, his controlled substances kept moving, and fast. The man no one could find was quietly becoming a dominant force in Europe's narcotics market. Under his leadership, the premier cartel Uruguayo opened a new transoceanic route that flooded the continent with coke on a scale authorities had never seen before. They started calling him the Narco Millennial, the next generation trafficker, younger, sharper, and more global than the cartels that came before him. In 2021, US DEA agents and Paraguayan investigators identified Marset as the central figure in a transnational network dispatching multi-ton shipments of narcotics to Europe by sea. But unlike older cartels that ran narcotics into the US, Marset's empire was designed for the Atlantic. Controlled substances moved from production sites in Bolivia and Colombia into the vast, under-policed Chaco region of Paraguay. From there, it passed through Uruguay and Argentina, eventually loaded onto cargo ships and private yachts bound for Europe. These routes were elaborate. Some vessels sailed straight across the Atlantic, others made stops along the way, refueling or changing hands in West Africa, often exploiting nations like Guinea-Bissau or hiding in plain sight amongst ships near Cape Verde and the Canary Islands. By the time the narcotics reached ports in Spain, Belgium or the Netherlands, it had crossed 3 continents and left almost no trace of who had sent it. But SENAD, Paraguay's top anti-narcotics agency, saw the pattern. They called it what it was, a vast scheme. A network that controlled everything from the jungle to the docks, production, transport, logistics, delivery. While governments chased his shadow, Marset was flooding Europe, and this was just the first wave. But narcotics don't move in silence forever. Eventually, it leaves a trace, and across Europe's busiest ports, that trail led back to Sebastián Marset. Investigators began intercepting narcotic shipments in Rotterdam and Antwerp, the 2 largest entry points for South American narcotics in Europe. Inside the containers, bricks of coke tied directly to Marset's network. Then came Operation Altrazana PY, a 27-month Paraguayan investigation launched in 2022. The findings were staggering. Authorities traced Marset's operation to at least 21.6 tons of coke seized across Antwerp, Rotterdam, Paraguay and Uruguay in just 2 years. The shipments weren't subtle. Europol officers reported that many were branded King of the South, one of Marset's personal monikers. And in one bust, a massive 4.5-ton load was intercepted, stamped with the letters PCU, the initials of his cartel. But the ripples didn't stop there. Spain, another major gate for Latin American narcotics, was hit too. Southern ports like Algeciras went on alert as authorities picked up signals of Marset-tied cargo passing through. In 2023, Spanish police boarded a Tongolese-flagged cattle ship off the Canary Islands. Inside, 4.5 tons of coke. Analysts linked the seizure to Marset's expanding transatlantic route. What shocked officials most wasn't just the volume, it was where it was coming from. Marset had transformed the River Plate region, long overlooked in global trafficking, into a major launch pad for coke headed to Europe. He didn't just move the product, he redrew the map, and this map was now spilling across oceans, stamped with his name. Once the coke reached Europe, Marset didn't sell it himself, he outsourced the streets. He forged alliances with established European crime groups, selling product directly to their networks. Amongst his key buyers were the 'Ndrangheta, Italy's powerful Calabrian mafia, which dominates the European coke trade. Marset cultivated ties with their syndicates, using their vast infrastructure to distribute coke across the continent. He also worked closely with Balkan cartels and Albanian mafia cells, criminal groups that had operated in Latin America since the era of smuggler Darko Saric. Balkan traffickers continued to use Uruguay and Paraguay as dispatch points even after Saric's arrest, a gap Marset likely filled, stepping in as their supplier. In northern Europe, his shipments reached the Morocco mafia, Morocco-Dutch networks that control narco trade in the Netherlands and Belgium. Their territory was soon turning up bricks stamped with PCU, proof that Marset's illegal substances had landed. As Insight Crime described it, Marset plugged his cartel into a global web, stretching from coca farms in the Andes to mafia bosses in European capitals. He coordinated tons of illegal substance shipments from Bolivia to Europe, then laundered the profits through everything from luxury car dealerships to professional football teams. With profits flowing in, Marset's clan fully embraced money laundering on European soil. Large sums were funneled into real estate, especially in Spain and across southern Europe, just as Latin American traffickers once did in places like Miami and Madrid. Back in Bolivia and Paraguay, authorities seized at least 11 luxury homes, ranches and apartments tied to Marset, assets believed to be part of this laundering cycle, possibly intended for resale and reinvestment abroad. By the time authorities caught on, the system was already running. Narcotics left South America by ship. Cash came back through wire transfers and real estate deeds. Paraguayan officials estimated that, over 5 years, Marset trafficked more than $500 million worth of illegal substances, with prices ranging from $12,000 to $14,500 per kilo in Africa to $25,000 per kilo in Europe. His reach wasn't just global, it was embedded. Through narco soccer clubs, shell companies and strategic alliances, Sebastián Marset had become the bridge between Latin American cartels and Europe's underworld. And all of it without ever stepping into the street. But the more his empire expanded, the less anyone could actually see him. How does a man move billions, spark international manhunts, and still feel like a rumour? Because Sebastián Marset isn't just a fugitive anymore. He's a myth. In the criminal underground, his name carries the weight of legend. A modern-day ghost who taunts police from the shadows. Interpol's most wanted fugitive since 2022 with a red notice, yet no one can catch him. Why? Because he doesn't fight like the old narco lords. He doesn't leave blood on the streets or challenge the state head-on. Instead, he disappears. In Bolivia, more than 2,200 officers, including elite tactical units and helicopters, were deployed to capture him in 2023. They surrounded his mansion, they blocked the roads, and still he slipped through the cracks. Again. In Paraguay and Uruguay, officials admitted that he'd lived among them for years, even posing as a football player, without anyone realising who he truly was. He was hiding in plain sight. 3 escapes weren't lucky. They were methodical. And now, the more it happened, the more Marset stopped being a man and started becoming a story. Now, in hushed conversations across police agencies, he's compared to the names like Pablo Escobar and Joaquim El Chapo Guzman. But here's the difference. Escobar made war. El Chapo was captured. Marset simply darted into the night. His powers didn't come from violence. It comes from invisibility and control. And that's what makes him dangerous. How do you fight against something that can't be seen? But sometimes it's not just criminals who go quiet. It's the government. One of the most striking details in Marset's saga is the silence that follows his name. In Uruguay, his case sparked a full-blown political crisis. The scandal surrounding his passport issuance rocked the administration of President Luis Lacalle Pou, forcing ministerial resignations and triggering parliamentary inquiries. After that, something changed. Officials became more cautious, even hesitant to say his name publicly, as if the mere mention carried weight too heavy to manage. A Uruguayan prosecutor later revealed that government aides had tried to destroy evidence, deleting chat logs relating to Marset's passport approval. It wasn't just mismanagement, it was a deliberate effort to cover up his growing threat. In Bolivia, the pattern repeated. After Marset's 2023 escape, authorities initially downplayed the incident, reluctant to admit what had happened. Only after pressure from the press did they acknowledge internal failure, including the quiet removal of the anti-narcotic police chief who had allegedly tipped Marset off before the raid. Country after country, there seemed to be a choice: confront Marset or conceal him. Even when the Colombian president Gustavo Petro addressed the high-profile assassination of prosecutor Marcelo Pecci, the elimination widely believed to have been ordered by Marset, he avoided naming him. Instead, he called it proof that the narco crisis was now an American and global problem. But not mentioning the name didn't weaken Marset's presence, it made him stronger. He became the narcotics lord who must not be named, a man so powerful, so embedded, that speaking his name could shake presidencies or expose entire institutions. The less they said his name, the bigger it became. But legends don't just happen. Some are carefully built. Marset himself has crafted the persona that fueled this myth. In August 2022, after months of silence following the passport scandal, he reappeared. Not in person, but on screen. From hiding, he sent a video message to a Uruguayan news channel. The clip was recorded on a phone using a South African number. Calm and collected, Marset didn't beg or run. He demanded respect, warning authorities to stop accusing him without proof. "If you have no evidence, do not speak about me," he said, brazenly challenging the government from the safety of anonymity. After his Bolivia escape, he pushed the spectacle further. In a new video sent to Paraguayan media, Marset openly mocked the police as incompetent. "I'm too intelligent for you, so as not to say you are very stupid, it sounds like a little better to say I am more intelligent." He claimed he was no longer in Bolivia, so you can stop looking for me there. Well, if you want, keep hunting me, but I'm telling you that I'm far away. These messages echo the defiant communiques of Pablo Escobar in the 1990s, or the public taunts from El Chapo's sons today. Bold, dramatic, and strategic. They kept Marset in the headlines, yet out of handcuffs. And it wasn't just the videos. On social media and TikTok, clips of Marset living large, playing soccer, partying, circulated widely. They didn't weaken his image, they enhanced it. He became known as the narco footballer, a man living a double life. On one side, a baby-faced football fanatic. On the other, a ruthless cartel boss. That contrast captured the public imagination. In the Latin American press, he earned 2 titles: Rey del Sur, King of the South, and Narco Millennial, a new kind of kingpin who runs operations with laptops and shell companies, not just scenarios and bribes. And unlike his predecessors, Marset has avoided overexposure. No compound shootouts, no final stand. Instead, he remains in the shadows, letting the legend grow while he stays a free man. In police agency circles from South America to Europe, his name sparks 2 reactions: frustration and disbelief. As one, the Justice Minister, Cecilia Perez Rivas, put it, "We couldn't believe the leader was a failed soccer player." Stunned that someone so unremarkable in appearance could mastermind an operation of this scale. Despite a global manhunt involving agencies from at least 6 countries, Sebastián Marset has outmaneuvered every trap laid to catch him. And his confidence is not just subtle. This is the man who, while still on the run, arranged school documents for his children in Dubai, calmly signalling to authorities that he considered himself untouchable, even abroad. And time after time, he proves it. To this day, there is no extradition, no trial, no mugshot in handcuffs. Instead, Marset has done what few narco lords ever manage. He has mocked governments, walked past borders, and stayed free. Officials now worry about what his legend is inspiring. If Sebastián Marset can publicly embarrass Bolivia, Uruguay, Paraguay, even the DEA, without paying any consequences, what message does it send? His elusiveness has been compared to D.B. Cooper or Lord Lucan, mythical figures who folded into the fog without a trace. But Marset is different. He's still active, still running a criminal empire, still invisible. And that combination, high-profile defiance and ghost-like mobility, has turned him into something far more than a fugitive. He's become a modern myth. But Sebastián Marset's story isn't just about crime. It's a mirror, one that reflects something far more uncomfortable. He started as a boy with a dream. He became a man who outwitted borders, bribed institutions, and outlasted governments. So the question isn't just how he did it, it's how the world let him. How much power must one man have to outmaneuver entire governments? And what does this say about the world we live in?